Today is the second Sunday of Advent. The Gospel text for today is Luke chapter 3, verses 1 through 6. One of the features of this Gospel text is Luke's attempt to situate Jesus as a historical figure at a certain time in a certain place. We've not always remembered that, the link between incarnation, the enfleshing of God, and history. Pope Paul VI, when he was speaking at the very closure of the Second Vatican Council in December of 1965, made a very telling observation. A bit blunt, really, but I dare say true. Paul VI said, "In previous times, in the past, and above all, in the present century, the Church was absent and cut off from human culture." This is a fairly damning thing to say. Siege mentality was a word or a description that was often used. This all dramatically changed, and it was in the light of the change that Pope Paul VI made his comments. The day before, or the last day of the council, the day before Paul's speech, there were 4 documents introduced to the council or promulgated by the council. One of them was the Pastoral Constitution of the Church in the Modern World, better known as Gaudium et Spes, from the first words of that document. Those opening sentences have become emblematic not only of the Second Vatican Council, but of the Church's recovery of its incarnational historical reality. Listen to those words again. The joys and the hopes, the griefs and the anxieties of the people of this age, especially those who are poor or in any way afflicted, these are the joys and the hopes, the griefs and the anxieties of the followers of Christ. Indeed, nothing genuinely human fails to raise an echo in their hearts. For theirs is a community composed of human beings. That is why this community realizes that it is truly linked with humankind in its history by the deepest bonds. An understanding of the Church as, if you like, ahistorical prevailed moments before, as it were. From now on, the Church is endeavoring, and I think the task is there still, for us to be serious about being an historical reality, not an ahistorical reality, not a metaphysical reality that, as it were, stands essentially outside of history. That lets us off the hook too easily. It also denies our identification with the incarnation. It denies the true nature of the Church. One of the most significant outcomes or consequences of that shift from an ahistorical self-perception to a thoroughly historical self-perception is a shift from telling to conversing. A telling church is a very different reality from a conversing church. The telling assumes one has the answers, that one is right, perhaps even that one can't be wrong. Such a disposition makes one vulnerable to arrogance, pride, triumphalism. It also builds barriers to transparency and honesty, especially when one is called to face one's limits and even one's sinful actions. The telling mentality makes it difficult for the Holy Spirit to be truly active in our midst. On the other hand, the conversing mentality is a very different approach to oneself and the world. Conversation implies that one sees oneself as pilgrims. We are a pilgrim church, a church on a journey. We are seekers. We don't have the answers. We don't know everything that needs to be known. We journey together with each other. We journey together with citizens of the world. We are in the world as Jesus was in the world, part of history. It inclines us, this conversing mentality, towards transparency and honesty, making it more likely that we will acknowledge our mistakes and face our sinful actions when that needs to be done and seek forgiveness. This mentality allows much more room for the Holy Spirit to lead us and to guide us, even through the voices of those outside of our midst, even guide us through the voices of those who oppose us. If we are a genuinely conversing people, a pilgrim people, we will listen for the truth no matter where it originates, because all truth comes from God ultimately, but it might find its way to our hearing via our enemies. It's possible. Cardinal Ratzinger, Father Joseph Ratzinger, Pope Benedict XVI, in 1966, wrote a reflection on the council that had finished 1 year previously. He used some very wonderful phrases. He talked of the council being a spiritual awakening for the church, a time, in other words, of recovering our true identity, facing up to the pretenses, the falsehoods, the misrepresentations. Ratzinger goes on, the new life that had been awakened in this encounter of the church with its true inner self. It was a homecoming. The awakening of the church, he goes on to say, involves also a mission and a challenge, one that will require great patience, the patience which comes from faith. The work lies ahead of us to be who we are, to become what we are. That is our vocation.